Most religious relics rely on tradition and faith, but the Shroud of Turin is treated as a laboratory subject. Experts across 102 distinct scientific disciplines have subjected this single piece of linen to over 600,000 hours of rigorous peer-review testing. In 1978, a coalition of physicists and researchers from military facilities like Los Alamos and Sandia National Laboratories formed the STURP team. They arrived in Italy with tons of advanced equipment, expecting to use the scientific method to identify the specific paints or dyes used to create the image. Their initial microscopic analysis found no evidence of any artist's materials. They detected an absolute absence of paint, dye, artificial pigments, or the directional marks left by a brush. The team transitioned their protocol from art history to forensic science, processing the artifact as a Level 1 crime scene. Centuries of Renaissance and Gothic art have conditioned us to see the crucifixion through a sanitized lens. The visceral reality of Roman execution was historically softened by artists to suit the aesthetics of the time. Spanish art expert Alvaro Blanco spent 14 years reversing that artistic filter. He translated the cryptic, two-dimensional forensic data from the shroud into a 75-kilogram, hyper-realistic physical body. This replica uses high-density silicone and real human hair to simulate the properties of a human cadaver. The texture of the skin behaves naturally, yielding and sinking under physical pressure just like real human tissue. By putting skin on the scientific data, the exhibition removes the comfort of religious iconography and forces viewers to confront the raw violence of the historical event. The rust-colored stains on the cloth have been identified as human blood, specifically the rare Semitic type AB containing male DNA. Encoded in the stains is a physiological record of his final hours. The blood is saturated with lethally high levels of ferritin and creatinine. These markers indicate systemic physiological collapse, proving massive muscle breakdown and acute organ failure before reaching the execution site. The head trauma also contradicts artistic tradition. Rather than a neat ring of thorns, the data reveals a dense, crushing helmet of rigid spikes that caused catastrophic hemorrhaging across the entire scalp. A medieval forger could not have faked these cellular-level signatures. Creating these exact chemical markers would require torturing a human subject into organ failure to harvest the blood centuries before modern hematology existed. Beyond biology, the shroud contains an ecological record. Criminologist Max Frey identified 58 distinct types of microscopic pollen embedded directly into the linen fibers. 38 of those pollen types are native exclusively to the Jerusalem region. Crucially, these specific plants only bloom during the spring, aligning with the historical window of Passover. This evidence is cross-referenced by the Sudarium of Oviedo, a face cloth kept in Spain with a documented history going back to the 7th century. Analysis shows that the blood patterns on the Spanish Sudarium contain the same rare type A blood found on the shroud in Italy. This biological and ecological match creates a chain of custody that a medieval hoaxer would have had no way to coordinate. The physical state of the blood on the shroud presents a significant quantum problem. The clots are anatomically intact, with no smear marks or torn edges that would indicate the fabric was pulled away from the skin. If the body had been moved or the linen unwrapped manually, the structural integrity of these clots would have been destroyed. The evidence suggests the body exited the cloth without physical motion. In 1976, Air Force physicists used a VP-8 image analyzer, a tool designed to map the height and depth of nuclear craters by translating light intensity into a 3D relief. While standard photos produce a distorted mess when processed this way, the shroud produced a perfect human relief. This proved the light intensity of the image was encoded relative to the distance between the body and the cloth, acting as a three-dimensional holographic map. To find a mechanism for this encoding, the NEA Physics Laboratory in Rome spent 5 years testing high-powered lasers to see what could alter the cloth's chemistry without burning it. They concluded that creating the image required a burst of 34,000 billion watts of directional light energy, a power level we cannot currently produce on a scale this large. The timing was also critical. To leave an image without carbonizing the linen, this energy had to be released in exactly 1/40 billionth of a second. During that fraction of a second, the body emanated through the linen, leaving blood clots undisturbed while the empty 14-foot cloth collapsed onto the stone. The Shroud of Turin remains an artifact defined by two sets of data: a biological record of ancient torture and a physical imprint left by an energy burst that modern science can describe but not yet replicate.